and it's a line drive to
Key lime margarita?
Yeah. What are you doing?
Just watch.
Whoa.
Hi.
Go for it.
Thanks.
What about me?
Got you covered. Hey!
Whoa.
Hey!
Hey.
Hey.
Lefty O'Doul's drink mixes at these fine stores.
What are you doing?
I'm getting the girl back.
Marvin the Game.
Recording at San Francisco's Gold Dust Lounge with a live audience. It's the Will and Willie Show. Now, Durst is in a documentary in progress with Johnny Steele and Larry Bubbles Brown called Three Still Standing, and we're three still sitting right here.
Well, we're actually four still
Yes,
sitting
right now. I'm Paul Wells.
I'm Will Durst.
And I'm Willie the Brown.
And, sir, you want to introduce...
John Burris.
And
John Burris, everybody. A man who keeps the streets safe for you and me.
And now that we got him here, why don't we ask him, John, I got a call from Ray Rice. He needs a lawyer. And he asked if I knew you.
round two.
I told him I'd call him back.
Okay. Well, I will say this. Ray was very, very fortunate to get the deals he got from the district attorney's office. His lawyer worked magic for him. And likewise, the NFL really gave him the kind of deal that shouldn't have been given. Now the question is, can they now really suspend him for a year or indefinitely when he has already been punished for the same offense? I think there are real questions here, and the collective bargaining agreement may have a protest about it. Now, should he have been punished severely at the beginning? Absolutely. He should have been punished severely. I don't think that seeing this video helps in any way. I mean, that's something they should have been able to infer in a reasonable way at the very beginning. Obviously, she didn't get knocked out from anything else. They knew he had punched her and knocked her out, so he should have been punished severely. But I do have reservations about now making a political decision about it, which is essentially in a public relations issue, by saying, okay, now that we've seen something that we've probably already seen and the public doesn't like it, we're going to give you more punishment. I'm really not for that.
Well, John, let me ask you this question. Isn't it potentially an example of the entirety of what football has been about for many years? And if you are representing Ray Rice in the effort to establish some justice in this situation for him under the circumstances, would it not expose the entire NFL to an extended investigatory history of all of their conduct in every case where they may have done something similar to what they did on his behalf with the 2-game suspension? Absolutely,
Because the question is one of notice. And an athlete needs to have some notice about what could happen to him. To the extent that the NFL has been sort of passive in this whole area, they really haven't given out real punishment when athletes have been involved in domestic violence toward their spouses and or friends. You know, athletes can take the view that nothing much is going to happen to you, particularly when they look at the fact that, you know, certain people have received real punishment, like in the drug cases where a person gets 1 year and another person gets 2 days. Down through the years, people have not been punished very severely. I mean, you look at what happened in the case in Rothenberg out in Pittsburgh. He got a few days. Some other people have gotten a couple of games. So I think that anybody looking at it say, look, a year or indefinite is way too much given what you have done in the past. And what you've done in the past is basically given very light sentences. And essentially what you did with Ray Rice at this time was pretty consistent with what you've done in other cases. Not right, but that's what they have done.
It can't be arbitrary. And I think you make a great point when you mention that, yeah, we knew she was knocked out. We didn't see the knockout punch, but it wasn't like she had fainted and he dragged her out by her hair.
It's circumstantial evidence, no question about it.
We knew what had happened.
Right.
And the circumstances have not changed.
They have not changed. And so, the real question, I think the problems with the NFL and their own public relations image, because they made a decision knowing at the time that he had knocked this young lady out. He was pretty vicious about it, and they still gave him 2 days. Now that this video comes out, they say, well, the times have changed with new information. That's really not true. And so as a consequence of that, now they want to give more punishment. They can do that. I just think that given what we now know, that they should develop more policies and practices for everyone else. But I don't know that Ray Rice should necessarily receive an indefinite suspension, even though he probably deserved that at the outset.
And she married him.
She married him. That's
Well,
not
I'm
a
telling
often
you.
that
happens
is
in
not a
abuse
defense.
cases.
Well, that
Yeah.
happens often. Okay, I was a prosecutor in Chicago, and we'd have a domestic violence cases, and what happens is a guy would have assaulted a woman. The woman would come to court, and she would say, "I love him." And then the prosecutor would then say, "What are we supposed to do now?" And in those days, we didn't do anything. We'd give them a peace bond. The world has changed substantially since then, but it still raises the question about what do you do when the woman says, I don't want anything to happen to him, I love him, I want to be married, and you are going to ruin, like this woman has said, you're going to ruin our lives if you're going to now suspend him or send him back to jail and take our money.
Our money.
Our
Good point.
money.
How does this affect Ray McDonald at this point? It's funny, two coaches named Harbaugh.
I think it
players
affects.
named
It's
Ray.
interesting, both names Hotbox, but
Yeah.
I think it's got to affect him in a significant way. He cannot give a two-game suspension. I think the policy they have is 6 days. The question is whether or not that's going to be sufficient. That's really a function of how many bruises she has. Does she have real bruises? I mean, where those bruises are, and how did he in fact do this? She's probably going to come back and say, "We just got married last week." And so, therefore, please don't give him a harsh punishment. And so the prosecution has to deal with that. Hardbox people will have to deal with that. NFL has to deal with it. But I think they have to come down with a serious hammer this time on him.
Well, John, I suspect, however, there will be no factual evidence available to support any accusation against Ray McDonald. I think that by now, those alleged bruises have gone away, and by now, she's probably of the opinion that he did not inflict the bruises.
And she started, too, didn't she?
Yes.
She was saying.
Yeah, she's going to say, well, I was wrong, and I suspect that we, the public, are going to be outraged because, after all, we saw him walking out of jail. Now, I'm into making sure that my client never gets positioned badly.
Doesn't do the
I would
perp walk.
always put my client who's been accused of a crime in the best Wilkes Bashford suit there is.
Right.
I'd get him a haircut.
Yeah.
He would look like the village priest. Maybe not the priest, but he would look close to being something really decent.
Like a
This was
band.
3 in the morning when it happened, so he didn't have a
Yeah.
chance to get his best clothes.
Oh, except that he never should have walked out with those shorts.
Yeah, right,
he
right.
should have gone out the back door.
Right.
What kind of operation do they have?
Yeah.
Not only that, he didn't even have a lawyer.
Right.
Meeting him, he was hailing a cab.
You're
I
right.
couldn't believe it.
Right.
He's got to have Uber. I don't understand how he did not, how he wasn't protected.
The optics were not good, but I don't think he should have been well dressed. I mean, after all, he's accused of beating up his fiancée. He comes out looking too well oiled. That means he's not taking it very seriously, and I don't think that's a good optics for him. There's an optics he should have, but not the optics when he's coming out with the best suits in the county or in the city or the state at 3 in the morning or 5 o'clock. I just don't think that was the right thing. I think this. If there were bruises, they have been photographed. I mean, bruises go away, obviously.
Maybe.
They should have been photographed if you could do that. If they were not photographed, then you have the whole question about he said, she said. Obviously, there was something. I'll tell you this. In a domestic violence case, it doesn't matter, really, how bad the things were. If the police are called and one of the persons says that person hit them, that person is going to jail. That's a matter
John,
of law.
And you are accurate in that regard. I had a situation in which domestic violence was alleged,
Right.
and the police showed up, and all they could see was the imprint of a Louis Vuitton or whatever those shoes are.
Yeah, right. Well, that's enough.
In the neck
You're
of
right.
the guy.
Oh,
They
no,
took
no.
the woman.
They took the woman to jail. I've had that.
She had used her shoe to defend herself.
You could hit a carotid, man.
Absolutely.
Right.
You could put someone
She
out of it
fired
completely with a
that
shoe.
thin shoe, that red bottom thin shoe, and they took her to jail.
Absolutely.
And I tried to explain that, and they finally bought it, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
That she was defending herself.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was defense, but she had no bruises,
But then
no anything.
she's in jail. She has to post bond. She has to hire you. That's a lot of money out the wine. And she, in fact, was innocent.
Well, wait a minute. You
That's
said
a lot
hire
of money.
me. John, my rates are not anywhere near.
Our guest right now on the Will and Willie Show is John Burris with Willie Brown and Will Durst.
This is
and I'm
fun.
Paul
John
Wells.
Burris and Willie Brown involved
I
in
know.
fee splitting right
Now-
now.
One of the high-profile cases that you've done was the New Year's Eve Oscar
Grant.
Grant.
Right.
You know, that was your case.
Huge case. It was a huge case.
Huge case.
Yeah.
And now we have what's going on in Ferguson and other cities. And as a result of our Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan type of, fight that we're in, we're outfitting local police with military gear, military grade gear.
I will say that when I saw that in Ferguson, it was shocking to me, and it was hurtful to see military tanks and people on top of those tanks with these serious weapons for everyday people walking the streets. And granted, they were protesting, mostly were protesting lawfully, some were not, but even those who were not didn't deserve to have these huge tanks and guns that were really designed for military action. So I really think that we've gone way too far in putting forth these military type weapons in local communities. I saw a town the other day. Free
They're
or
free.
not.
They're giving them away. It's
They're
government
giving 'em away.
surplus.
You can't leave them in Afghanistan or Iraq.
Well, they'll wind up in the wrong hands there.
So you got to bring them back. What are you going to do with them?
You put them in a junkyard. I mean,
I
just
agree.
That's like those ships we have out in the Suisun Bay. You dock them.
The Ghost Fleet.
Yeah, you
throw them in
dock
the Ghost
them.
Fleet.
And so
We've
I
sold
think
most
that
of that
I think
off
that
now,
is
though.
going to happen. That is going to happen. That I think the government is going to reevaluate that position.
But it illuminates what we're doing over there. I mean, we don't like having them having tanks, with guys with military assault weapons pointing at us. But it happens every day in Iraq. Happens every day in Afghanistan. And it just, I think it reminds people of how wonderful America is.
And I would guess, by the way, that the equipment that they're making available to the police, they're all defects.
No.
I wouldn't be so sure about that. They didn't look defective to me.
No.
Now, what
Guys
percentage?
on top of those tanks.
What percentage of the police departments in the U.S. now are made of veterans who have fought in Iraq or Afghanistan?
I don't know what percentage, but I'll tell you, in a lot of the cases I'm involved in, and I have a lot of these cases, a lot of shootings, I do worry about whether or not the officers who are engaged in the shootings are, in fact, veterans. We had one guy more recently here in Oakland. He, in fact, was a Iraq veteran. He's suffering from PTSD. He wasn't telling anybody. He caught a blacks out. He doesn't put on his tape when he's supposed to. And it was a real problem.
John,
And he
were
meant
any
well.
of the people in the famous case that you had over in Oakland, one of the first, where you had that whole squad that...
right, the Riders case.
Yeah, the Riders case. Was there any discussion about previous military experience of any of those people?
We took their depositions. They were military people. All of them were military veterans. But I really couldn't say we honed in on that. Their conduct was so outrageous just in terms of what they were doing, in terms of stopping people, harassing them, giving false testimony against them, planting drugs on them, and then lying about it. We were more focused on those particular issues. As you know, that case became a signature case nationwide for police reform. And we did that without bringing the Department of Justice in. The very thing that the Department of Justice is going to do in Ferguson, and that is to take a look at the history of policing there, whether in terms of stopping, detentions, searches, training, those kind of issues we dealt with in Oakland. And we put forth in our consent decree that allowed us to revamp and relook at the department. Dalton Henderson was the judge. He was there and had been overseeing it for the last 12 years. We have not completed the task, but we're getting very close to it. And there's I have met with the department command staff for once a month for the last 12 years and looking at these issues. And I think we're finally making some progress. I'll probably be retired before it gets finished, but at least the progress is being made.
John, let me ask you, you know that when you had that particular case, you didn't have the access to all this video that is now available in almost every incident.
Right.
The video available in the Oscar Grant case, the video available in some of the other cases.
My most famous case, though, with the video that started this whole process was Rodney King.
Yes.
When I did Rodney King, that was the first case, really, where there was a video camera that showed the world, particularly the African-American communities and other communities, that police really do engage in this type of conduct. And there was much resistance. But since then, video cameras have become sort of the underpinnings of many, many cases that are out there now. And I think it's a wonderful thing that police departments now have lapels and on that can do it.
Body
Certainly in open
cameras.
cameras, and plus everybody else has a camera. So it makes it, I think, has the ability to reduce the level of misconduct. It also, from a community point of view, people tell me a lot of things about what happens to them. You know, and sometimes, you know, Willie will probably know, but you kind of wonder about it. But if you see it on video, you can confirm to the client, hey, that probably didn't happen the way you said it happened. And so I think the cameras works both ways.
What John is talking about is in the early days when we were criminal defense, he's much younger, but in the early days of criminal defense lawyers, one of his mentors, a fellow named Clint White, would always tell you, when you interview the client, you said, now, I don't want to know what you're going to say. I want to know what you think they are going to say.
Right. And it's absolutely true, because clients often will distort their perceptions about what happened. And if you have the video camera now, you can show them. I will just say, okay, tell me about that. You know, take a look at this and see how this squares what you're trying to tell me.
And explain it.
And explain it.
What about, John, you currently have a case that all America has witnessed at least the video of.
Right.
And that is of that police officer pounding a defenseless woman on the freeway.
Absolutely.
In L.A. You have that case.
I have that case, and I will tell you that it is one of the most vicious beatings I have ever seen. Now, Rodney King was obviously very vicious, and it went on a long time, and there were a number of people involved. But I've never seen a woman getting beat that way. And so now we're in the middle of this lawsuit, and one of our issues here is whether the police officer is going to get prosecuted by the city attorney of the district attorney of Los Angeles County. And we're waiting for that to happen, but we're in the middle of the lawsuit. We're trying to bring this lady was having a lot of problems. She had been homeless for a long time, and so we're trying to give her some stability in her life. But as a case, I've never seen a beating as bad as that of a woman who was defenseless at the time.
Casebook definition of excessive force.
Excessive force, absolutely. And
Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard on this show, probably in America currently today, the most successful and obviously the most gifted and currently the most dedicated of all the lawyers representing people who have been mistreated by the police authorities of this nation. We're just delighted, John, to have you with us.
Well, thank you. Good
John, can you stay around for a Q&A at the end of the show, please?
Sure.
John Burris, ladies and gentlemen. The Will and Willie Show.
Good show.
We're going to take a break right now, and they'll get a little news on this Sunday, and then we'll be back with Wilkes Bashford in our third segment. I'm Paul Wells with Will Durst and Willie Brown. It's the Will and Willie Show here from the Gold Dust Lounge.